Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our final webinar of 2021. We're just going to give a few minutes for participants to arrive and settle in, for your audio to get set. So we'll just give it about 2 minutes before we have our official welcome kick off. So please give us just a moment. For those who have just joined us, I'm delighted to welcome you to our final webinar of our 2021 year as part of the Networks of Opportunity for Child Wellbeing team, the NOW team at Vital Village Networks. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our collaborator, Valentina, from the CLC, who is going to introduce our language justice process. Thank you, Valentina.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Valentina and I'm here on behalf of Community Language Co-op, here to provide language justice for today's webinar. Thank you very much everyone of the participants and everyone in the call, involved in the call, for engaging with language justice. Language justice is the type of simultaneous interpretation that seeks to create spaces in which no one language is dominant, spaces in which everyone can participate with the language of their heart. So to achieve this objective, and as a reminder for those of us who have already engaged with this practice, what we will see in a couple of minutes is that a new button that looks like a globe will appear at the bottom of your screen. So when you see that button, go ahead and click on it and select the language that you wish to listen and speak in, that is English or Spanish. You can also select to mute the original language if you want to avoid the overlap between the two languages. And if you're joining the call on a phone or on a tablet, you will find the same options by clicking on the little button with the 3 dots that reads More, that is located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And hola a todos, a todas. Mi nombre es Valentina y estoy aquí por parte de la Community Language Co-op para ofrecerles justicia del lenguaje. Muchas gracias a todas aquellas que estén en esta llamada y que estén comprometidas con hacer justicia del lenguaje, que es un tipo de interpretación simultánea que busca crear espacios en los que no dominen ningún idioma, espacios en los que todas puedan participar con el idioma de su corazón. Para lograr este objetivo, vamos a utilizar la función de interpretación de Zoom. Sé que tal vez muchas de ustedes ya conocen esta función, entonces como un recordatorio, vamos a esperar a que en unos minutitos va a aparecer un nuevo botón que parece un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Cuando lo vean, hagan clic en ese botón y verán 3 opciones aparecer: inglés, español o apagado. Seleccionen el idioma en el que desee escuchar y participar, y también puede seleccionar silenciar el idioma original para evitar la interferencia entre los 2 idiomas. Si usted está en esta llamada a través de una tableta o de un teléfono, encontrará las mismas opciones haciendo clic en el botón que tiene 3 puntitos y que dice More o más en la esquina inferior derecha de su pantalla. Listo, muchas gracias por tenerme aquí nuevamente. Vamos a activar los canales y recuerden seleccionar su idioma de preferencia. Okay, thanks again for having me again. And let's go ahead and turn the channels on to make sure that they're working correctly. Remember to select your preferred language. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valentina, and thank you to the Community Language Cooperative. We're so excited to have you all here. Welcome to our final webinar of 2021. What a year it's been. So I'd like to just get us started. I'll be sharing a brief outline. If I have not had the pleasure of seeing you before, my name is Ronda Alexander. I serve as the Director of National Partnerships with Vital Village Networks. And I'm so happy to have you all here. So today's session outline, we are currently in our welcome and overview, and we'll just spend a few more minutes here doing some housekeeping and talking a little bit about Vital Village before we move into this phenomenal conversation about reimagining child welfare and exploring equitable models for collaborative family leadership. And then that will be followed by a panel discussion and we'll be taking questions from the audience. So I invite you to share those, and then I'll go over a slide in a couple of minutes that will just show you how to share. And then we'll close up right at 2 o'clock Eastern today. We've already talked about language justice, but just a reminder, all of us, so every participant here should select a language, and you can do so by clicking on that little globe icon on your Zoom platform and then selecting the language that you would like to hear. Again, for Spanish language access, we want to send a huge thank you to our Community Language Cooperative based in Denver. We will be recording today's webinar and it will be posted on the Now Innovation Forum and available to you. And again, I invite you to submit questions via our chat box, comments via the chat box, as well as submit questions through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen as identified here. So I'm just going to share a very brief background on Vital Village Networks. We are a national collaborative of diverse change makers and organizations, and we are committed to sustainable approaches to transforming child, family, and community well-being. Our Networks of Opportunity for Child Wellbeing is a national initiative powered by Vital Village Networks, and we exist to achieve social transformation and racial justice by partnering with our community and networks across the country to build capacity to equitably share power. Now, today, I am so excited to, and I will share just a little bit about our guiding principles. I won't read them, but they're here on the screen for you. So that just gives you a sense of how we operate and how we function. But I would love to spend some time sharing just a little bit more and welcoming two amazing speakers who are going to be joining us today to talk about child welfare. We're going to hear from Marv Neal. First, he's the Executive Director of 365 Dad, and then we'll be hearing from Jeanette Vega, the Co-Executive Director for Leadership and Policy at RISE. We'll hear from each of them for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll share a couple of questions, and I invite you to share questions as you hear them, and we will get to as many of those as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Marv Neal to the virtual stage to get us started and to learn more about the work that you are doing on behalf of fathers, children, and families.
Thank you so much. I was just waiting for the applause to happen. You know, I didn't know if I was too early or not. Did I miss them? But as Ronda said, I'm Marv Neal, Executive Director of 365 Dad. And what we do at 365 Dad is not work exclusively with fathers, but work primarily with fathers. Reason being, there are a ton of programs and assistance out there for moms and for children. And when it comes to helping dads, there are not many programs out there, and I've recognized that along with my partners. So with that being said, we wanted to be a liaison and an assistive arm to fathers that are in need of various services. We have also partnered with organizations such as Fathers Uplift and various organizations throughout the city in order to meet that goal of being here for fathers. We know that fathers are challenged when they go for services. I remember a time before I got into this work, I became a single dad. And stepping up and doing what I have to do as a father, I went to enroll my daughter into a daycare. And to make a long story short, once I brought all the documentation to the daycare center to register her, the first thing that the executive director of the daycare center asked me was, "Where's mom?" And my response was, "Why? I brought everything that you need." And she said, "I need to see the mother." And I couldn't understand that. So she would not, to wrap that part of the story up, she would not register my daughter for school because the mom had not brought her. And she told me that I needed a documentation from the court that says that I have custody of my child in order to register her for school. Talk about a blow. So with that being said, and the crazy thing is, it happened to me at 2 different daycare centers in the same day. So, that right there was enough for me to know that there has to be some type of change in systems and the way systems do business. So I work with fathers using the Nurturing Fathers program, which is a program that I went through and successfully completed, and realized how effective a tool the Nurturing Fathers program is in helping men and trying to get them in touch with themselves and making sure that they know and understand how important they are in the lives of their children. It's very, very unfortunate that men are discounted, and a lot of men don't believe that they bring value to the family. So what we do is we try to instill in them that they are valued members of the family, and that with them, their children's chances in life are better. We go through this program in a 13-week time period, and each week there's a different construct that we cover, and we talk about their childhood. We talk about some of the things that they experienced. We talk about how it was growing up with their dad. And when we ask this question, if you could hear your dad say one thing, what would that be? And 98% of the men say, I love you. As men, we're not necessarily taught that it is okay to tell your sons that you love them, to embrace your sons, to show them affection. When we're raised, we know what we know from our parents and how our parents raised us. And we generally become those types of parents in most cases. There are some cases where the child will grow up and not enjoy or like the things that their parents have done and change their parenting practices. But if you look at that individual, there will be some things that they do that mirror exactly what their parents did. So with the Nurturing Fathers program, we just try to make guys aware of what those practices are and try to help them to change them to be better men and better fathers in the lives of their children and in their relationships that they have with their children's mothers and people in general. I don't think that was about 10 minutes or so, but there it is. 365 Dad, we're on the web, 365dad.net. You can reach us there. We're on Facebook as well. So thank you.
Marv, thank you so much. We are not at the end of our conversation with you. We're going to hear from Jeanette Vega for a little bit, and then we'll come back. And I have a ton of questions for you, so I can't wait to dig a little further into the conversation. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Jeanette Vega to our virtual stage to share more about your work with Rise. So welcome, Jeanette.
Always when I play a PowerPoint, it mutes me for some reason. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all having a beautiful day. I want to say thank you, Marv, first of all, for representing fathers, because you're absolutely right. Majority of people represent mothers, so we applaud you for that in an extreme way. Again, my name is Jeanette Vega. I am Rise's co-executive director alongside Bianca Shaw, who's also a co-executive director. I like to start all my presentations by letting people know that I am a parent impacted by the child welfare system myself. Oh, yep. Can everybody see the screen? Yeah. So Rise has a few different tools that we use for frontline practice in child welfare. And we're just gonna talk, I'm gonna try to talk pretty quickly because 15 minutes goes pretty fast. So Rise today has different formats of how we work. So our first way of working is through our Rise and Shine Parent Leadership Program, where we train parents who have been impacted by the child welfare system. Every year we do a 16-week cohort where we're really teaching mothers. We also also include fathers. As you can see, we had one dad in that group. They're always invited, but majority of people that do join are women at Rise, mothers. And what we do in Rise and Shine is really give parents tools, knowledge, and information on different topics of child welfare, history of child welfare, the parent advocate movement, understanding what community organizing means, thinking about how to become a voice for change in policy. But I think the biggest aspects of the Rise and Shine program as parents impacted is the trauma triggers that we feel doing this work and how hard it is as a parent impacted to be in different settings with child welfare stakeholders. We uplift their voices, we help them write their stories and their experiences so that they can reflect on them with peers of their own who have the same similar experiences. And the reason we do that, have that safe space, is because as parents, we always feel that people are judging our stories and our experiences, but our experiences are what are going to bring the systematic changes that are needed, because those who are part of the problems are the ones that have the solutions. We also do a lot of information for parents and knowledge building. We have our magazine that we have online now virtually, with different stories from parents who have been impacted, again, just sharing their experiences and connecting their experiences to system changes in policies, advocacy, organizing, a lot of different platforms. We also created some tips handouts. We call it our harm reduction works, because we also work with the child welfare system. We train child welfare staff to bring in a parent perspective into their work, really helping them think about what it means to help parents. And we're going to go through that in a minute. And our new work is all about peer and community care model. We're developing a model where we're going to be training parents and community allies to be each other's support, because the reality is that mandated reporting is at high levels, and that those are the reasonings that parents get child welfare cases, because they live in poverty, and the child welfare system categorizes those things as neglect. So we will be fighting to give parents more peer community support networks so that they get less involvement in child welfare. And at the same time, we will be working on our policy recommendations on mandated reporting, extending the vouchers for childcare. And the third one is really thinking about what are the mental health services and how can those services be more trauma informed and have more parent perspectives in them. We always go with what parents say they need first. Every parent is an individual, and it's important that we also start from where parents are. The reality of what catches us child welfare cases, like I said, is poverty situations, hunger, instability of housing, inadequate childcare, evictions from the home. But when we face all these stressors without the proper supports, we actually do not get the support we need, and we end up having the same crises and situations over and over. And we found that those are the reasons that child welfare gets involved in families' life, not because of the situation, but because no one is giving families resources for specific things. So all of these things become a crisis, and then child welfare feels that we're unfit and we can't take care of our children. I love showing me and my little man. Again, I'm an impacted parent. My son was removed from me at 2 years old and given back to me at 5 years old. And I can only express the trauma and the long-going trauma effects that has on me. Thank God he doesn't remember being in foster care, so it doesn't have none on him. But the reality of separation in New York City is high. And my goal in Rise's goal is really to stop families to come into this system. We love to communicate positive intentions, and the way we do that, again, starting with the help parents say they need. Outside stress factors parents face, some things that child welfare does not think is relevant, but is very relevant. So if parents do have to go into the system, we should be mindful of these few things. Parents do not just lose their children. Right? As a parent impacted, I lost my job. I had to stop going to school because the reality was that the system wanted me to do services and didn't care about my professional growth, right? All of these things had to be stopped. I lost my food stamps because, again, majority of families that the child welfare supports or lack of support is Black and brown low-income families, and most of them are on HR benefits, so they lose their food stamps. They lose their housing vouchers because now we don't have children on our cases any longer, and we end up getting evicted. And we lose a piece of ourselves. I like to tell people that when my son was removed, like a piece of my heart was taken. I felt so isolated, so alone, having to go home to a room where your child's things are and not having your child there makes you lose a piece of yourself, right? So these are all of the things that parents lose. And at Rise, what we try to do is give parents a roadmap to reunification. If they are in foster care, you don't have to do all of your services in the beginning. You can do one thing at a time, really thinking about where is this parent and how much can they take to help them get to reunification faster. Again, we created some tips, checking in for success. These are different tips. We have 4 handouts that are focused on visiting in foster care and what parents can do to move their visits forward. And then we have 4 different sheets focused on service planning, how to elevate your voice, how to advocate for yourself, how to negotiate throughout this crazy, hard, difficult child welfare system process. And what we do is that we're trying to change dynamics within the system. Usually, I like to say this is me and my caseworker. I was a boxer. I had anger management issues when they took my son. I hated everyone. I wanted to fight. But what I thought they thought of me was the same thing. When you speak to caseworkers, they feel the same fear. Parents feel angry. They don't trust anyone in the system. They feel judged. So what they do is they avoid and they assume that you're not really there to help. Thinking of when you look at all of my tips trainings, you will start to think about a different approach to how are we sharing power with people? How are we saying that the parent is not the problem, but the situation that got my child removed is the problem? Being more curious and open, having more options and choices for parents, and making invitations. Nothing at Rise is mandated, not even my handouts, because parents get mandated enough in this system. And the last one is how are we problem solving together? This is my favorite picture because I used to categorize myself as the dragon. Everyone was attacking me. Everyone was judging me. I was that bad parent. I'm the one that did that bad thing that got my child removed. But when the system sees parents like that, we get nowhere. The reality is that I'm Wonder Woman, right? I'm fighting that situation that got my child in there, and I want to reunify. And Batman and Superman are my advocate, are my caseworker, and they're helping me tackle that situation, which means I'm going to reunify faster, and I'm actually going to have a support network that I can believe has my back throughout this difficult process. And I will end with saying that families can flourish and grow and never return to child welfare involvement when they are supported and guided. And I love, again, to highlight my beautiful family. I am the only girl of 5 awesome boys. That's my husband in the green shirt. And what this picture reflects is that because I had a child welfare case with my oldest in the red shirt when he was 2, I have never had child welfare involvement in my life because I ended up getting the tools, the knowledge, and the resources that I need to support my family to thrive. And that is exactly what Rise does for families. We give them the information, the tools, and the knowledge so that they can advocate for themselves. And again, really build that peer network so that they do not have to go to child welfare to get the things that families need on an everyday basis. So thank you guys so much for listening to A Parent Perspectives from Rise.
Oh, Jeanette, thank you so much. I'd love to invite Marv back on screen because I have a few questions for both of you. I think both of you shared some both personal and powerful experiences and talking about the work that you do. And you started to share some of the solutions or some of the innovations you've used. I'd love to maybe hear from both of you. What have you found to be most successful in your approach to reimagining both child welfare and father and parent engagement? Marv, maybe if you could start us off, what have been some of the solutions from your approach to work with dads? And then Jeanette, I'd love to hear from you.
I would say just being understanding and patient. In particular, when working with fathers, men are not very trusting. Systems have done fathers wrong. I have been one who also has been involved with the child welfare system, not because of something that I did, but because of something mom did. And I was put through the ringer, trying to gain custody of my son back. And, once I proved myself, I was able to get custody of my son, but it was a struggle. It was a battle. And, I jumped through hoops and didn't get the, I wasn't given the patience from systems as most moms and women are given. And I wasn't given the multiple chances for fathers. I had to understand and learn that, it's pretty much a one-shot deal. You got to do it right the first time, or else, you really don't get a second shot. So hearing that type of frustration from men, it just takes patience and understanding when you work with them, just to gain their trust, because a lot of guys just don't trust that systems or people within systems are in their favor.
Jeanette, what about you? What have you found successful in your approach? In their approach of rights?
I agree with Marv. I think that trust is definitely hard to build. And the way we build trust with our parents' advice is just, again, bringing that genuine safe space where we're just genuinely parents first. I think that's something different from an organization that people are like, we're staff. No, like, we're parents. And we always represent ourselves as parents before we represent ourselves as anything else. And we're just not judgmental. I think when you're in, I used to say with my old organization, it's crazy how pain connects people. But that's what RISE does. Like, we have so much pain inside of us from all of our personal experiences that some of our parents never had the outlet or the space to even say what they went through or how they're feeling about it or how they felt, triggered or isolated or abandoned themselves. And I think we do try to be more trauma informed. But I think the approaches that are working the best is, one, ignoring the child welfare system and really reimagining what we want New York City to look like by building our peer and community care model. And second approach that works really well, has been working, is incorporating more parents who have been impacted into the system itself. So we also train parents who have been impacted to be parent advocates in foster care and preventive agencies, so that parents, again, are getting that different kind of support, that real kind of support from people who have said, hey, I didn't like the way this system supported me. So as a parent impacted, I'm coming in and I'm going to give parents tools, knowledge, information so that they can navigate, and that they're not lasting 3 to 5 years in this system, which is the average of what families last in the foster care system.
So how, both of you mentioned trust, right? And building trust and relationships and creating those safe or brave spaces. How does including parents and families in this way, how does that change the narrative and change the story that we typically hear?
I can start. I think, like I said before, I think now you're hearing directly from the people who are experiencing this. I think what happens is that white upper class privileged people want to make decisions for people in community of Black and Brown, but they don't understand our lives. They don't know the realities of what it is to be a parent and live in the Bronx, not having enough food for the week and having to figure out how you're washing clothes for your kids. So I think when you really start to think about the reality of what it's like, it's important that we're not just on those tables, we're leading those tables, because the people that have the problems are the ones that we know, one, what's best for our families, and we know how to come up with the solutions that are going to support our families and communities. So I always say one thing RISE is doing is we're not just attending people's tables, but we are creating our own tables, and we're inviting other stakeholders, because I think it's important that the majority of people in the table are parents impacted, mothers, fathers, youth, grandparents, right? These are all people that are the real source of supporting families. And what ends up happening is that you have all of these other stakeholders with all this power in this room, and they're making the decisions on what they think is best for our families, but they have no idea what our experiences are in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on, Jeanette. Meeting people where they are is important. And when you can demonstrate that you understand the challenges that people face by explaining to them some of the challenges that you faced, it really will help people to understand and know that, you know where they're coming from. So when you have people that sit in the office all day and make decisions and call shots, and then they get in their fancy car and drive back to the suburbs, they know nothing about what's going on in the community with the people in the community. And that's a really sad thing. They will try to make decisions for the better of the people in the community without hearing the voice of the people in the community. And that's just important. You got to take into consideration the people that are being impacted so that you know that you're making the right decision.
Thank you both. I see we have a question in the chat. It looks like a two-part question, so I'm going to start with the first from Nikia. It says, could someone address the dichotomy of culture and parenting? For example, in the South where I live, moms raise their daughters and love their sons. I have watched women lose jobs at high rates due to lack of quality childcare or a village. So I think the first part of that question is just addressing or thinking about this difference between or dichotomy of culture and parenting and what that looks like.
I think I can say that I think every parent is an individual parent. There has never been a handbook to how to be a parent. And I think even like when I had a case and I had to take parenting class, like they sent me to this room, they were like, oh, put the baby on the corner and like explain to him like why he's on timeout. And I'm like, okay, try that. My son just go to sleep. He's like, whatever. And then he wakes up, like do the same thing again because timeout doesn't work for our children, right? But really thinking about what it means to understand people's culture also, because I think my son was also removed because I'm Puerto Rican and I was raised, if you get crazy, you get hit. Like, that's just what it was growing up for me. I never got removed from my mother hitting me and my brothers. So when my son acted up, I felt like, ooh, let me just pop you a little bit. And then you're not going to do that thing again, right? Because when I would get hit, I would never repeat the thing again. And it didn't work, right? The child welfare said that I was abusive because I had hit my son. And when I explained to them my culture, they didn't care. They just kept saying, well, that's not how it's done. And I'm like, yeah, that is how it's done. Like, I was raised that way. And if I get crazy, grandma's still going to pop me. Like, grandma don't care about no child welfare system. I can be 21. And if I get out of line, my grandmother's going to like backslap me, right? And that's the reality of our culture. But again, just like Marv said, these people do not understand our lives, our cultures, but yet they want to make policies and decisions that they think is best for our communities to thrive.
So I definitely want to say that culture is important. It's the way children are raised in the South is very different than the way children are raised in the North. I know going down South, I encounter young folks and everybody's calling me sir. I'm up here in the North and everybody's calling me the N-word. Yo, what's up, my N-word? So culture is different. It depends on where you were raised, how you were raised, what values were instilled in you. I have to say, that growing up, I was raised getting spanked. That was just a part of the culture. That's just how it was. When I went through the Nurturing Fathers program, one of the facilitators told me, it's not good to spank your children. And he and I got into a debate about it. And, I said, this is where I come from. And he said, I come from the projects too. And we started to dialogue about how mother could find, when she was trying to catch you. And then we talked about the effects. So as we began to talk about the effects of the hitting, he asked, did you like when you got hit? Well, of course not. I didn't like it. He said, when you got hit, did it stop you from doing what you were doing? I said, yeah, in the moment it stopped me. He said, did it stop the you doing it permanently? I said, of course not. I tried to be a little bit more sneakier so that I could get away with it next time. So he said, so what you're saying is hitting doesn't work. And I'm like, nah, I didn't say that. He said, you just said that. It stopped the action, but it didn't stop the behavior. So then I had to look at that. So as we continued this conversation, he said something else that stood out and it made sense. And he said, "You have daughters, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You spank your daughters?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "You know that if you spank your daughters, that is setting them up for failures." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "You are teaching your daughters that it is okay for the man that loves them to hit them." And I said, "Whoa."
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of it like that. So I had to stop and I had to look at some of my parenting practices and had to think about some of the things that my parents did. They did because that was the toolbox that they were working from. And as I began, continue to grow, my toolbox begins to expand. So once we continued and finished that conversation and I started to look at the different things that were going on in my life and looking at how my children were affected, I had to make a conscious decision. Moving forward, I'm not going to spank my kids. Why? Because I don't want to beat my daughters and then put them in a position where they're believing that it is okay for the man that loves you to hit you. Mm-hmm. So I stopped spanking all of my kids. And when they did wrong, I had to figure out other ways to punish them or to give them structure. And I just took spanking completely out of the equation. So when we talk about timeout, standing in the corner doesn't work. That doesn't work for my kids. Go stand in the corner. You're 7 years old, standing for 7 minutes. That don't work. So I have to be a little bit more creative and say, okay, you like that PS2, right? Okay. Well, look, until you demonstrate that you can do this, I'm going to take the PS2. Mm. And then, the timeout thing starts looking different. It's timeout can be, it doesn't have to be standing in the corner. It could be taking the cell phone, because we all know everybody loves their cell phone.
That device.
Mm-hmm. You take that cell phone away, that's their lifeline, yeah. And you can tell them, but there has to be a time frame and an identifiable reason why you're taking away the cell phone, so that they understand, look, you did X, Y, and Z, and this is why I'm taking the cell phone. You'll get the cell phone back at this time. And we got to be clear about the things that we're telling our children and make sure that they understand and don't allow one punishment to run into another punishment, and, try to keep things separate. And, it's just crazy, but these are all things that I've learned going through and implementing the Nurturing Fathers program.
Marv, I think you said something really interesting about how your toolbox expands as you grow. You get more tools, more resources. Jeanette, I think you alluded to the same thing. The second part of this question reminds me of that. It says, how can we be proactive to help parents with depression and other types of mental illness prior to medicating with drugs or other self-destructive behavior? So thinking about what are some things that might be tools for parents who are dealing with depression or mental illness? What are some things that you all have experienced?
So I can say that, for us, what we try to do is just keep the lines of communication open, making sure that the parents can recognize, if they have triggers, what those triggers are and what to do when they are triggered, putting together a safety net so that when they face challenges, they can get right on the phone and call somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I need your help. Building that network of people so that when you go through something or when you feel yourself going through something, you have someone right away that you can call and need you, and they're there to support you. So that's super, super important.
Mm-hmm. Taking the shame out of asking for help is what I kind of hear you getting at. Yeah, Jeanette, what about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think what we practice is restorative justice circles, and just really giving. I think, people are like, I'm depressed or I have all these situations, but the reality is that they just feel alone. A lot of parents just feel alone. They feel isolated. They feel, like Marv said, they don't have nobody they can trust to talk to about real problems. Because when you go to people and they're mandated reporters, like, I've had parents tell me, like, I can't even use the word overwhelmed in certain situations because people is like, oh, you're overwhelmed, and they just look at you like if you're supposed to have it all together all the time as a parent. So I think it's like building that trust with people so that they can have those conversations. And like Marv said, definitely agree, communication is key. When even if it's not a situation, if I'm feeling aggravated, like my kid is not listening, or like I keep getting these phone calls from school, like I'm about to bust him upside his head, but I don't want to, who can I call to have that conversation with? Who can walk me through, right? Like having that, I would be able to say, like, oh my God, Marv, like, I don't want to kick his butt, but I'm about to, like, oh, take away his PlayStation, take away his control. Great ideas, right? Like, let me start implementing that. Because sometimes people feel overwhelmed in a space where they just can't think straight. So you just need someone to run ideas through, help them give you suggestions. The support circle I run at Rise on Thursdays from 6 to 7. What we do is we just say, this worked for me, right? I don't like telling people what they should do. Like, you should statements should not come out of people's mouth, is my perspective. But you can say, hey, when my 13-year-old did that, like, this is what I did, this is what worked for me. And now you're just throwing ideas of parenting out there to people. And I tell people, you take it or you leave it, whatever works for you and your family. But at least you're getting different ideas and suggestions of how to deal with different situations with your children, personally, right? Like, oh my God, I didn't get a week, I need some self-care. Like, what does that mean, self-care? People say it a lot, but I'm like, can we go do lunch? Can we just take a walk for 20 minutes and just like get away from everybody? Do you need to go do your nails, right? Or your toes, like make yourself feel good? But again, that aspect of having that communication and that peer support from someone you can trust and just have conversations with, I think will start eliminating a lot of these mental health diagnoses.
Yeah, no, I think what I heard you both say is around one, having a village, a tribe that you can go to where you can be vulnerable and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. How did you deal with it? And creating spaces for folks to connect. We have another question that just came in. It says, thank you, from an anonymous attendee. It says, thank you for sharing your personal stories. They're very powerful and have some clear through lines to your models of community-driven collaborative family leadership. What would you like to see from funders? How can philanthropies best support your work? Marv, would you like to start us off? Yeah.
The best way philanthropy can support the work that I'm doing is give us the funding that we need in order to be able to do more programming. When we do Nurturing Fathers programs, it costs anywhere, depending upon where we do the program and what organization we do it with, it can cost anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 to do one 13-week program. And what we try to do is build in, along with the program, build in the extra added stuff that we do with the fathers. A lot of these guys have never taken their children on an outing. So one year we took a group of fathers and their kids right up into the Blue Hills and took them hiking. All these guys in the group, there were, I want to say, maybe 14 or 15 Black guys, about 5 or 6 Spanish guys, and 2 white guys. So we're sitting down and we're talking, and we said, you know what, we should do something together. And the white guy spoke up and said, why don't we go hiking? Because, as us, Black folks, we like, let's go to Canopy Lake. Let's go to an amusement park. And the white guy says, why don't we go hiking? So we're like, hiking? And everybody in the room laughed. And I said, Black guys don't hike. And after that, everybody laughed again. And I said, why don't we do something, like the amusement park? Let's go to Canopy Lake. And he said, you guys have this gem right in your backyard and you don't even use it. People come from hundreds of miles around just to walk the Blue Hills. Most of you guys can get there in 20 minutes. You don't understand the gem that you have. And I stopped and I had to listen to what he was saying. And I heard him. And I said, you know what? Let's get out of our comfort zone. Let's try something different. And we went hiking. And it was the most incredible thing that I'd ever done. I took my children hiking. All the guys took their children hiking, and we climbed to the top of the what they call the big side of the Blue Hills and got up there, and it was a huge accomplishment. From that one hike, me and my children, we go hiking all the time. Amazing, just, so with philanthropy, it's really about providing the funding that's needed and the resources that are needed in order for programs like 365 Dad and like Rise to be able to continue to do the work that we do that can be effective to the families that we encounter. And I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much time, but let me just tell you this last story. There was a father in my program, and this guy, he was about, I'm 6 feet. I'm pretty hefty. This guy was like maybe 6'5", 6'6", football player type, wide. He dwarfed me. So we're talking, and he tells me how when he grew up, his dad, which was a big guy like him, whenever he acted up, he said, my dad would put his foot in my chest. Put your foot? What? So yeah. Whenever I act up, my dad would put his foot in my chest. Okay. I said, so is that what you do to your son? He said, yeah. When he act up, I put my foot in his chest. His son was getting in trouble every day in school. Every single day they were getting a call. And every day he was beating his son down. When he said he put his foot in his son's chest, I looked down at his foot. This dude had like a size 14 foot. And I'm imagining him kicking his son. So I said to him, what are you doing Saturday? He's like, nothing. Why? I said, why don't you meet me over at the park? And I told him where to go. And he looked at me all crazy. Man, what you want me to meet you at the park for? I said, no, nothing like that, man. Just listen, meet me at the park, bring your son, and just meet me at the park. So he met me at the park, and I'm out there with my kids. We're throwing the football, me and my son. I take the football, I toss it to him. He tosses it to his son and says, go play. I said, no. You go on this end, let your son go on that end. And him and his son start throwing the football. The entire time I had known his son never smiled. His son smiled while they were out there throwing that football. They threw that football for like an hour and a half. Me and my son pulled off to the side and started throwing the Frisbee. By the time we got done, they went their way, we went our way. When we got back to the program the following week, this dude ran up to me and picked me up and squeezed me and said to me, my son did not get in trouble one time this week. So amazing. I said, you know why that is? He was like, I don't know, man, but whatever it was, it worked. I said, you took the time to throw that football with your son. Your son just wants your attention, man. So sit him down, talk to him, do things with him. Don't just send him off to his room. Interact with him. And from there, his son turned his behavior around and started getting better.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
That is a beautiful story, Marv. No, that's a story worth the time for sure. Yeah, I think I would add the same thing, that it's important that organizations like ours get funding for basic things, right? I work with parents all the time, so it would be great that if a parent calls me and says like, I don't have Pampers or I don't have milk, that I actually have funding in my stream in order that I can go get them a $25 gift card to a supermarket. Again, just trying to provide things that people need on a daily basis, because what happens is that they usually have to wait or apply and there's a waiting list. But if you're hungry today, you need something today, immediate. And again, those family activities, fun time is always important for children and parents to thrive. And I think the main thing that I would ask funders for, which one of my co-director said this in one of our speakings, that it's important that these funders are also giving our organization space and grace to learn and build, because reimagining does not happen overnight. And
Mm.
people expect you to say, like, this is what the new program looks like, and they expect you to scale it out within a year. But we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have bumps in the road, because building trust in the communities that are most impacted is the hardest thing to do, because like Marv said, there's no trust. Even if I'm a parent and I'm impacted, they're like, we don't trust you, girl. I got to build that trust. So that takes time, energy, community organizing, and just being in community. And sometimes funders don't pay that. They want to see outcomes. They want to see impact. But the impact is that you're in community. And if I can get 10 people in that community to join my circle and just have conversation maybe once a month, that right there should show impact. But little things like that are not appreciated out here. And I think funders should, again, give especially new leaders like me, like some space and grace to like think about, brainstorm, do a few mess ups as we go along, and give us that time to actually grow our programs. And again, reimagining does take time, so giving us that space to really work that out and be with community while we do it.
Yeah. So we just had one last question come in, and we only have about maybe 3 or 4 minutes total for this question. But the question is, has there been a shift in nonprofit redlining and inequities in funding? How can we call out or call in holding funders accountable consistent with systemic racism? How can we call our funders? How might we call our funders in?
Well, I think one way we've been calling funders out is asking them to start to disinvest from funding system programs, and child welfare is specifically at rise, and to really think about, as a foundation, how are they also supporting and funding grassroots community organizations? Because the reality during COVID was that no one went to these big entities. People went to like down the block community centers, mom shops, and those were the communities giving out free diapers, free coat drives, free food. Restaurants in the Bronx were giving out free food for breakfast, free food at 6 o'clock for families. And they didn't have the funding to do that, but they did it because they really care about community. And I think if funders really start to disinvest from funding child welfare stakeholders and systems, and really fund organizations like ours, and other community-led, parent, family-led organizations, I think the world will be, it will also start to shift what the reimagine look like, because we'll have what we need in order to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And short, just in addition to that, just reminding funders of the importance that they bring to the table for the work that we're trying to do. I think showing funders the outcomes is important. So if there's a way to videotape or record the work that you're doing and be able to display the outcomes, that's going to be really, really important to make sure funders understand why they're needed.
Mm. Thank you. So I have one last question for you as we begin to wrap up. If you think about the breadth of your experiences and how you have focused on uplifting dignity and healing and really centering parents in general, but also fathers in particular, what's one lesson, one thing that you would like for folks to walk away from today with? Each of you have a little bit of time to answer.
You want to go first, Jeanette?
Yeah, I think I can start with that parents are individual people, and that every family has their own individual needs, and that is important that anyone that says they're a support takes time to care and actually get to know people in a genuine way, and that support is not only for the color of your skin. Even services that are quality, or any kind of support, quality, resources, services, anything, that it doesn't matter what color your skin is, that everyone is entitled to the same quality services, and that parents just get what they need in order to thrive without system involvement.
I would say fathers are important. And I want you all to think about the relationship that you have with your father or father figure. Is it good? Could it be better? What's missing? If you could have your father say anything to you, what would you want to hear him say? It's important that we engage these guys out here in these streets and make sure that they understand how important they are in the lives of their children. I stand on that. And you know, if we don't begin to really push this fatherhood work the way it should be pushed, the cycle will continue. Fatherlessness will continue. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for such a rich conversation, and some of the nuggets you shared around building trust, building relationships, taking time to listen, growing your toolbox. I think all of those things are really important, and inviting us to ask funders to think differently about how they're working and what they're supporting, and both how they are contributing to the problem, but also contributing to solutions. We really, really appreciate that. I appreciate you all for being with us as we wrap up 2021 and our webinar series around nurturing families. I just have a few things to share with our participants as we wrap up. I'd like to thank you all for being our participants, for being with us this year. As I mentioned earlier, today's webinar and conversation are being recorded, and you will be able to find them on the Now Innovation Forum at networksofopportunity.org. I hope you all will come back and visit us. Come join us in 2022 for our next series. You can also email us. Our email address is on the screen, and you can follow us on Twitter at now_wellchild or at vital_village. I hope you'll join us. And lastly, I invite you to complete the short survey after the webinar. Your feedback is really important to us. It helps us think about how we can continue to grow and modify our webinars and our series. So thank you all so much. I wish you a fantastic day, a safe and happy holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you all with us in 2022. So have a fantastic day. Bye, everybody.
Happy holidays. Thank you guys for hosting and inviting us. It was a pleasure.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Marv, I wrote down your information. I'll be hitting you up.
Beautiful. Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a happy holiday. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.